The Nintendo Wii is an incredibly charming system with a fantastic library of games to enjoy. 16 years later, and these experiences still hold up today, full of unique personality and fun. I grew up making Miis and shaking Wii remotes, and I have tons of nostalgia for a lot of these games. This console will always hold a special place in my heart, and I fully admit that I have a bit of a Wii bias. But I really do think this system has some terrific games, and today I'm going to be sharing my list of the top 25 Wii games. Of course, all of this is just my own opinion, although I did try to restrain my nostalgia to a degree. But this is still very much just my personal list, and I guarantee you'll disagree with something eventually. And if there's a really great game that you think should have been on the list, chances are I haven't played it myself, so feel free to leave suggestions in the comments. I decided to only include one of very similar games, so only one 3D Mario, 2D Kirby, etc. This way I'll be able to include more unique games in the list. I'm also not including any collections like Super Mario All-Stars or the Metroid Prime trilogy. I feel like I have a really solid list of games to share with you all today, so let's get right into it, starting with number 25. Excitebot's Trick Racing is a super over-the-top and fast-paced arcade racing game that's a ton of fun to play. You take control of various animal and insect-shaped robots and zoom around cartoonish versions of real-life locations. Once you get a handle on the controls, it's really satisfying to pull off tricks and navigate through the courses, while hitting a home run on occasion as well. It also has incredibly energetic music to match the feel of the gameplay. It may not be as accessible as other kart racers on this list, but it has its own style that really makes it stand out and still feel fresh all these years later. Wii Party is the best party game on Wii in my opinion, thanks to its huge selection of fun minigames and multiple different game modes. The Miis are as charming as ever, and the gameplay has a great mix of motion and pointer controls as well as just normal button controls. I really like how there are different modes you can play that have entirely different rule sets, so you can change things up and keep it feeling fresh. It has more content than most of the other games from the Wii series, and is a lot of fun to play with friends and family. Mario Party is great too, but if you're looking for a solid game for local multiplayer on the Wii, this is one of the very best. Zack and Wiki Quest for Barbarossa's Treasure is a fantastic puzzle game that doesn't get nearly enough attention. The tightly designed levels are full of brain-teasing challenges that will really make you think, and they feel great to finally solve. It also has really good use of motion controls, letting you more personally interact with the objects of the world. The character designs and story are super charming, and it's a lot of fun to replay the levels even after you've already solved them. It was awesome to see such a fresh and original IP debut on the Wii, and I wish this game would have gotten more love when it originally came out. LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is easily the best LEGO game on the system thanks to its huge amount of content, covering 6 iconic movies all at once. Among me and my friends, this was an absolute must-have, and we'd spend hours discussing the game's hidden secrets and unlockable characters. The levels let you play through the biggest moments from the movies, and the story is recapped with grunts and noises that honestly make it way more entertaining, as long as you're already familiar with the plotline. I spent hours as a kid making my own custom character and replaying the Obi-Wan vs. Anakin level over and over again. Kirby's Epic Yarn has one of the most original art styles for a Kirby game, with an arts and crafts aesthetic that still looks great today. This game might not be the most difficult platformer, but it makes up for it with the amount of creativity and fun put into every level. Whether you're transforming into a fire engine or running through an entirely music-themed level, this game consistently delighted me with its ideas and charm. It's very possible that Return to Dreamland is the better game in a lot of ways, but something about Epic Yarn just keeps me coming back years later. Plus, I absolutely love Prince Fluff, and I hope he comes back one day. Mario Strikers Charged is the strongest Mario sports game on the console in terms of personality and rewarding gameplay, with a surprisingly difficult challenge mode that I'm still trying to finish all the way. The usual Mario cast of characters have never felt so alive and interesting, with each one standing out in their own way, and I'll never get over how cool the Mega Strikes look. The half soccer, half hockey gameplay is brutal at times, which just makes it all feel even cooler. This game is the peak of Mario sports games for me, and nothing has been able to top its vibes and energy. Wario Land Shake It is one of the few times when Wario gets to hog the spotlight to himself, proving that he should get the chance more often. His treasure-obsessed ways will never get old, and he controls a lot differently than most other 2D platformer protagonists, giving the gameplay a more heavy and impactful feel. The cartoon art style looks great, although I do wish it could take up the whole screen. There's a lot of fun ideas in each level, and having to run backwards through the levels at the end is really fun too. To this day, this is still the most recent Wario Land game, which is a shame since this game proves how terrific this series can be. New Super Mario Bros. Wii is pure 2D Mario fun, at a time when the new series hadn't gotten old yet. For me, this is still the best of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, with strong levels that can be enjoyed by yourself or with others. The new power-ups, the propeller mushroom and penguin suit are great additions, with one giving the levels more verticality and the other making underwater swimming actually bearable. This game may have the usual formula that's been used a lot by this genre, but I think it's at its best here, and playing with 3 other players makes the levels even more chaotic and fun. De Blob 2 is a really creative 3D platformer with an interesting main mechanic of painting the world around you, slowly bringing color back to this black and white world, which is super satisfying to do in each level. The music is one of the main highlights here, and each color having its own instrument that plays as you paint is the perfect cherry on top. I love the characters and the world in general. It's one of those games that I just love spending time in. I also love the first game, but the second one improves on it in almost every way, but mainly the fact that you press A to jump instead of having to shake every time. Rhythm Heaven Fever is an addictive rhythm game with tons of wacky charm, and of course amazing music as well. Learning to master each minigame feels rewarding, and each one has a totally unique theme that's often hilarious. Once you get it down, this game makes you feel like a rhythm beast, perfectly timing your button presses and blitzing through tough remix challenges. The time just melts away when I play this game, as the total concentration it requires makes it kind of relaxing in a weird sort of way. The sound effects and tiny characters in each minigame are full of so much personality, and I'd love to see this series make a comeback someday. Rayman Origins was a totally new direction for Rayman at the time, and what an amazing new direction it was. Visually, this game is gorgeous, and it controls like a dream once you master Rayman's many moves. Every level feels distinct and different from the rest, with really solid design every time. On a system that has a lot of 2D platformers, Rayman absolutely proves his worth with this terrific adventure. This game is consistently impressive and constantly fun, with lots of personality thrown in there too. While Rayman Legends may have perfected this formula later on, all of its great ideas started right here. Animal Crossing City Folk may not have introduced very many new ideas to the series overall, but it's still an Animal Crossing game, so that means it's good. Seriously though, no other gaming franchise can match the laid-back atmosphere of these games, and City Folk is no different. Catching fish and bugs to pay off your loan with a business raccoon is a gameplay loop I'll never get sick of. And the city concept is actually pretty interesting and offers a nice change of pace to the usual small town vibes. This is also the last home console Animal Crossing game where the characters are mean to you, which I'll always miss dearly. Okami is a beautifully crafted adventure game with really unique gameplay that works perfectly with the Wii's pointer controls. This game is basically a Zelda game, only you play as a sun goddess in the form of a white wolf, and if that isn't enough to sell you, I don't know what will. I adore the Japanese mythology feel that runs throughout the whole game, and the story is always engaging and interesting, and the sort of watercolor cel-shaded look the visuals have still looks impressive today. Unfortunately, this game didn't sell well enough to become a new long-running series for Capcom, which sucks as there's so much potential here. Resident Evil 4 is often considered one of the greatest games of all time for good reason. Its action horror gameplay is even more satisfying with the Wii Remote's controls, and many people still think this is the best way to play the game. Well, aside from the new shiny remake they just made, I guess. The new over-the-shoulder perspective gives the player a more immersive experience than previous Resident Evil games could offer, and the pacing of the story is near perfect. The only reason this game isn't any higher on my list is because I'm not the biggest fan of horror games in general, but that doesn't take away from the fact that this game is a masterpiece. Super Paper Mario leaves a lot of the classic Paper Mario gameplay behind in favor of a more action-focused 2D platformer that sometimes turns into a 3D platformer thanks to its main mechanic of switching perspectives. I understand why many people are frustrated with this game since it was the first time Paper Mario started to have an identity crisis, but I just love everything this game does. It may just be because I'm not the biggest fan of turn-based combat, but the platformer-style gameplay is more fun for me personally. And the story is fantastic. Seriously, one of the best narratives of any Mario game. And I really like how you can take control of different characters like Bowser and Peach. It may not even really be an RPG anymore, but I still think this is one of Mario's best adventures to date. Mini Ninjas is a game that I absolutely adore. Look, everyone has those games that they'd put way higher than anyone else ever would, and this is that game for me. I think this game is super underappreciated, and even if it maybe isn't strong enough to truly deserve a place in the top 10, just let me have this, okay? This game captivated my imagination as a kid and was the first time I was fully immersed into a video game world. The huge open levels felt like mini open worlds to me, and I spent hours exploring and enjoying the beautiful world around me. It has somewhat simplistic combat and story, but it's the overall atmosphere and aesthetic that make it one of my personal favorites. Super Smash Bros. Brawl is probably the edgiest game in the series, and I love it. It easily has the strongest single-player campaign of any Smash game with the Subspace Emissary. Seeing all these iconic video game characters interact with each other was, and still is, so cool. This is the closest this franchise has ever come to truly making the most out of its huge crossover of characters. The fighting gameplay is a little slower than usual, but you get used to it pretty quick. Local multiplayer games don't get much better than Smash Bros. And even though many people look at this game as the sort of black sheep of the franchise, I just think that makes it feel even more unique and interesting. Punch-Out is a perfect example of how to bring a classic series back to life with a modern feel, and the use of motion controls is amazing. The animations for the characters are cartoonish and lively, making each one of your opponents really fun to fight against. The core Punch-Out gameplay is pretty much the same, but just with a lot smoother feeling movements and punches. This game may seem simple, but it's really replayable because of how fun the core loop is. It's almost like a sort of puzzle game at times when you have to learn how to dodge and react perfectly. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword brings one-to-one swordplay action with motion controls into the Zelda series, which may be a good or bad thing depending on the player. For me, I really love the accuracy and precision it brings to combat, and the story, visuals, and music are terrific as well. This game just has a beautiful atmosphere that I love, and the dungeons are some of the best in the series. I totally understand why others would choose Twilight Princess over this game, and depending on the day, I'd do the same thing. But you can't deny that Skyward Sword is the game that feels more inherently tied to the Wii's identity, and personally, I've always loved this game despite its flaws. Donkey Kong Country Returns is yet another great example of bringing back an older series, and it once again proves that Donkey Kong has better 2D platformers than Mario. Easily my favorite of its genre on this system, this game has buttery smooth controls that feel great to master, with challenging levels that require the perfect amount of skill. The level design in this game is unmatched, with every single element feeling and looking like a natural part of the jungle around you. Similar to Rayman Origins, this style of game was perfected later on with its sequel, but this game is what pioneered this amazing new style of Donkey Kong platforming. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption changes a lot of elements from the first two games, adding in a more substantial story and letting you travel to various different planets. I love these new changes, and I think they give the story a grander and more epic feel that fits Metroid perfectly, and the new style of motion control aiming they made for this game is just incredible. It's my preferred way of playing Metroid Prime games, and this is what created that format. The combat and puzzles get to be even more complex thanks to the new control scheme. The world design, music, and upgrades are as great as ever, and it's a fantastic send-off for the trilogy as a whole. Xenoblade Chronicles is the original game that started the whole series. Well, as long as you're not counting the other Xeno games. And in my opinion, the first game is still the best of the whole franchise, with a gripping story and massive, beautiful open areas to explore. It's really impressive they were able to develop a game of this size and scale with such limited hardware. The unique style of combat feels like a mix of real-time action and turn-based combat, with the potential for real depth if you learn all the mechanics, which I've never really done myself. But the incredible soundtrack and memorable characters are more than enough to cement this experience as one of the best on the Wii. Mario Kart Wii may be somewhat unbalanced and frustrating at times, but that's all part of the fun. This game has a level of energy that few other games can match, and it brings terrific new course designs that are still some of the very best from Mario Kart history. A really solid roster of characters and fun battle modes make this the peak local multiplayer game on the console. And don't even get me started on the music, which has become iconic for so many of us who grew up with this game. I understand why many think this game feels unpolished or janky, but for me it's a level of fun that's always a blast to play alone or with friends and family. Super Mario Galaxy is a masterclass in atmosphere and ambience in my opinion, with enough space vibes to fill an entire galaxy. Mario's simpler moveset allows for more in-depth and complex level design, with memorable levels around every corner. The story is surprisingly touching and emotional when you really dive into it, and the orchestral soundtrack has yet to be topped by any other video game. This game is an absolute joy to play through and I've replayed it countless times myself, and I can say that it still plays best on Wii, as the game was clearly designed around these unconventional controls. I love the second game a whole lot as well, but the first just barely wins out over it because of its stronger ambience and story. Super Mario Galaxy is a phenomenal game, and there's only one other game that could beat it for my personal #1 spot. Wii Sports Resort is the pinnacle of Wii gameplay and atmosphere, with perfect motion-controlled gameplay and tons of summertime vibes. I'm obviously very biased here as this is one of my favorite games of all time, but I really do believe this game is what this system is all about. No other game on this list is as fun, replayable, or makes me quite as happy as this one does. Whenever I play this game, my mood instantly improves, and Woohoo Island is my personal getaway from it all. The first game is groundbreaking, of course, but there's no question that this sequel is the better game with 12 amazing sports full of side modes to enjoy. This game means the world to me, and there's no question that it deserves its spot at the very top of my list. And that's my list of the top 25 Wii games. Like I said at the beginning, I'm sure you disagreed with something in there, so be sure to let me know what your favorite Wii games are in the comments. I really enjoyed going back and replaying all of these games, whether I was reliving childhood memories or discovering a game I'd never experienced before. This console isn't perfect, and it catches a lot of flack, sometimes deservedly so. But for me, it just has this special magic ingrained right into its wiring that makes it unlike any other video game system, and I'll always love going back and revisiting every fantastic game that's available on the Wii. I also want to quickly thank all of you for supporting the channel so much recently. It just passed 40,000 subscribers, which is hard to believe. This video is kind of my way of celebrating that and trying to give you all something to enjoy. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see ya in the next one.